Welcome back to Mint Mind. We are back on EGPS today. We're talking about subject, object, active and passive voice. I'd like to have a look at the question that I've got on the board here. It's from a recent EGPS paper, and it says, how does use of the passive in the second sentence affect the way the information is presented? Sentence number 1 is, Max dropped the red bucket. Sentence number 2, the red bucket was dropped. And you've got to answer whether you think it does not say who dropped the bucket, it shows the action happened in the past, it shows it was an accident, it does not say why the bucket was dropped. If you aren't clear on what on earth passive is, I totally understand, because when I became a year 6 teacher or became a primary school teacher, I had no clue about active and passive voice, subjects and objects, had to reteach myself as well. So it's no surprise to me that people are looking for a revision video on subject, object, active and passive. I'm going to give you a system today that will hopefully clear that all up, because as I'm showing you on this slide now, you could be asked about any one of the four. So you have to understand the whole system, because you could be asked about circle the subject, identify the object. Is this sentence written in active or passive? Change this sentence from being written in active to passive. Change the sentence from being written in passive to active. So you really need to understand this at a deep level. I would say you could get up to 3 marks on an EGPS paper for this. And of course, it will be useful in secondary school as well. So let's get straight into it. Having a look at these sentences now. Mr. Biddle carefully crafted the lesson plan. My dog was sprinting around the field. Chris visited the gym before the sun came up. I'm going to tell you these are all written in active voice. Now, test number 1 for active voice is, does it sound like we usually write? If it sounds normal in inverted commas, it's probably active. It's because we've got a subject doing a verb to the object. Subject, Mr. Biddle, crafting, the verb, the lesson plan, object. My dog is the subject, because he was sprinting, he was doing the action around the field, the object. Chris, subject, visited, that's the verb, the gym before the sun came up. So that's the object there, because that's what it's happening to. So the object is what it's happening to. Subject is doing something to the object. Mr. Biddle crafted a lesson plan. My dog sprinting around the field. Chris visited the gym. And I put be careful at the bottom, because you start to get in your mind, oh, okay, well, I know the subject's just a person then. Whenever there's a person or an animal, that's always going to be the subject. But it's not always going to be that clear. The sun shone on the lush green field. There's no person, there's no animal here. So we have to go back to who's doing the verb. Well, the verb is shone, to shine. And then this one, the brick slammed into the wall. Well, the verb is slammed, or to slam. So what's doing that? The subject, the sun. And what's it happening to? It's shining on the field, which is the object. Again, the brick is doing the action. The brick slammed into the wall is the object. So don't get caught up thinking that the subject is always going to be like a living thing. It's not always. It's the thing that's doing the action. And what I've done here is in red, I'll write it in red. Red is active. And I've rewritten the sentences in passive voice underneath. So Mr. Biddle carefully crafted the lesson plan is active, as we know, because Mr. Biddle was the subject. He crafted the verb, and it goes subject, verb, object. But let's look underneath. The lesson plan, still the object, was carefully crafted, verb, by Mr. Biddle. The subject doesn't actually change. It doesn't change. Mr. Biddle is still doing the thing. He's still crafting the lesson plan. We've just flipped it round. So now the lesson plan is still being acted on, and it's the other way around. The lesson plan was carefully crafted by Mr. Biddle. That is now written in passive voice. Same thing, same words, written differently. So my dog was sprinting around the field. That's in active. Subject, I will write in red so we don't really confuse ourselves. Subject, verb, object. And now if we were to flip that around, you might be able to do it in your head. It sounds slightly odd, and this is why I say active voice is how we normally write. The field was sprinted around by my dog. It sounds a bit clunky. The verb is still happening to the field. Sprinting is still the verb, and my dog is still the subject. It just goes at the end. So if it goes object, verb, subject, it's passive. And if it goes subject, verb, object, it's active. I'm hoping you're kind of starting to click into this a little bit now. So Chris visited the gym before the sun came up. It's active. It's how we'd normally write it. Subject does the thing to the verb. Subject does the verb to the object. And now the other way around, the gym was visited by Chris before the sun came up. That is passive because we have the object, which is the gym, visited, still the verb, by Chris, who's our subject. I'm hoping that makes that a little bit clear. I have just summarized it here on this slide. So the subject is doing the action, whether that is the sun shining, whether that is the dog sprinting, whether that is the brick slamming, Mr. Biddle crafting. The subject is what's doing the verb. That's always true. The object is having the action done to them. So the sun shining on the field, shining onto the field is the object. If we write subject, verb, object, and this is, I'm going to put in inverted commas, normal. We normally write. This is active voice. If we write object, verb, subject, this is passive voice. It's less normal, still used a lot, used in newspapers a lot as well. But we need to know the difference. Have a look through whatever reading book you're looking at the moment. If there's a narrative, a storybook, it's going to be a lot of active voice. But there'll be some passive in there as well. Let's go through some questions. I've tried to get a question that shows every aspect of this. So, rewrite the sentence below in the active. So we know it must be written currently in the passive. I'm going to strongly recommend that you write subject, verb, and object, or object, verb, and subject over your sentence. So the dog was fed by Bill. Well, I know that's the verb. Bill is our subject, and the dog is the object, because Bill's doing the feeding to the dog. To rewrite it, the dog was fed by Bill. I would say Bill, capital, fed the dog, full stop. It does say remember to punctuate your answer correctly, so you need a capital B for Bill. You do need a full stop. You need to dot your I better than I have as well. It says now rewrite the sentence below in the passive, which means we must already be in active voice before we even looked at the sentence. Remember to punctuate your answer correctly. The children grew vegetables. The children, so grew is the verb. Children are doing that. They're the ones growing. The vegetables are the object. Now we flip it round. You don't have to use exactly the same words because you're going to need to add some in for passive here. So the vegetables were grown by the children, or something similar to that. The vegetables were grown by the children, or vegetables were grown by the children. 1 mark, well done us. 1 mark, well done us. Do start writing in subject, verb, object. If you start doing that, you'll understand the reasons why. You'll start to clock into what's active and passive, and you'll be able to see it for yourself rather than trying to guess and remember. Okay, so circle the subject of the sentence below. I said sometimes you're going to be asked for specifically what's the subject, what's the object. Sometimes they're going to get you to rewrite it in a different voice. So it might be better to look for the verb first. So circle the subject of the sentence below. So wrote, Josh wrote a letter to his Canadian friend. So wrote is the verb. Who did it? Josh. Who was it done to? Canadian friend. I put the objects all of Canadian friend. That doesn't really matter. But circle the subject. Josh is our subject. Label each box with a subject or object. Let's do verbs first. So baked. Sam baked cakes for charity and he sold them. Who was doing the baking? Sam. What was being baked? Cakes. Who was doing the selling? He. Them. Let's fill that in. So. Better than so. Got them all right. Well done us. Well done us. And now what we can do is finally go back up to the starter question, which was, how does the use of passive in the second sentence affect the way the information is presented? Quickly do this. Max, subject, dropped the red bucket, SVO. The red bucket, object, was dropped. We don't have a subject. So it doesn't say who dropped the bucket. That's the difference, isn't it? We don't have the subject in the second sentence. It doesn't tell us. It's not about whether the action happened in the past, because they're both in past tense. Max dropped, the bucket was dropped. Shows it was an accident. No claim about intent whatsoever. It doesn't say why the bucket was dropped. It doesn't say why the bucket was dropped in either of them. So, as I always say, if you know that the answer is correct and it's the first option, tick it. Be confident with yourself. Of course, read through the others, but you can confuse yourself. If you're confident, tick what you know is right. So, it does not say who dropped the bucket. We have no subject in that second sentence. Hoping that is going to make things clearer. This is one of the more complicated topics. As I said, when I started being a year six teacher, I had to reteach myself. It's also one of the things that slips out of the year six's minds in the class that I teach the most. Here is the slide that's most important to you. The subject is doing the action. The object is having the action done to them. We normally write subject, verb, object. We usually write in active voice, and if you flip it around, it's in passive voice. But really do start writing subject, verb, and object on your question, and that's just going to help tighten everything up. This is one of those that you really need to know the reason why. You need to understand it deeply so that you can answer any question on it, because there's 4 different ways they're going to ask you to do things, and you need to know, you need to be on your toes for these ones. But it is going to come up 2, maybe even 3 marks on an EGPS paper. So yeah, one to focus on, maybe one to rewatch, send it to a friend, whatever you need to do. Like and subscribe. Let me know what other things you need to know about EGPS or maths or anything else, and I can help you out with that. Ciao for now.